Welcome to the Bear Cave, the Week 18 preview for the Green Bay Packers and the Chicago Bears. The Packers are a 10-point favorite at home, which is, in my opinion, sounds about right. I think they'll win by more. But Dobbs, I think my main thing is this is kind of a Packers team who's kind of looking to get right. Like they're going into the playoffs, and obviously they don't want to play, you know, they don't want to play. I think they would rather play Detroit than um, a Philly team, which very well could be, the number 2 seed here if they're the number 6 seed. Basically, all that to say is it's not going to be an easy game for the Bears, and the Packers are probably going to come to play.
No, absolutely. And again, as we've talked about, I know in the moment nobody wants to hear it, but again, Hunter, long term, the Bears losing this game is probably better for the franchise than them winning it. We've seen again how we always talk about, well, what if it translates to next year? And it's like when it's a new coach, when it's a whole new system in place, none of that translating to next year is real. It's a whole new year. Everything that year is that year. They're not carrying momentum over months. Again, and like I said before we start recording, that's like use the Raiders, for example, like how the Raiders ended the year right last year, and then everything was going to be good with AP. Like that doesn't translate to next year. As much as
No.
it would be a sweet ending, I suppose, to what the tragedy that this losing streak has been. It's almost let's just end it off. Let it just be the losing streak to end the whole season, because at that rate, at least the draft capital will be the compensation. We don't have to look back saying, "Oh, well, if
We
we didn't
should have
win
just
this
lost. Yeah.
game, we could have had blank, fill in the blank. We don't know what it's going to be yet if that was the case." But you know what I'm saying here, bro. It's kind of like just close it out. In the moment, nobody wants to hear it, especially diehard fans. But long term, Hunter, it probably is the best case scenario.
See,
It may be a
I've
close game where you show flashes with Caleb. That's
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
but
I've usually been on the just lose the game train, but actually, I mean, like, I don't care either way what happens in this game as long as, like, it's been every year or every game this year, Caleb looks competent. Um, I don't mind if they win because one, it's a rival. It's been a long time since they beat the Packers. But also, if you lose, you might be getting better draft position. I think with a loss and a lot of other contributions from other teams in the league, the Bears can move all the way up to 4. Now, I don't think that is really going to be the case. I think the highest they'll probably pick is 7. They're at the 9 spot now. I wouldn't be surprised if they stay there. But I also know that if they win, I think the lowest they can pick is 10. So it's not like, well, we if we win this game, we're not going to be out of a top 10 pick, which is nice.
no,
But
that is
I
nice.
can't count on the
Well,
Bears to win any game. So
no, but here's what I'm gonna say, Hunter, because you agree with this. The difference between 4 and 7 is humongous. The difference between 7 to 9 and what I even just 10 is also
yeah,
humongous. So, especially, and as we've talked about, a draft class where as of right now, again, scouting process can change some things, but with what we have right now, with how we feel right now, this is a draft class where specifically for the Bears, you really want to have it as high as possible for what the Bears are going to want and need specifically. It's not loaded with the talent that they're going to be looking for for that first round pick, right? So the bottom line is they kind of have to keep. They got to. And nobody wants to say it. Nobody wants to lose, but this is a game where honestly losing is, in my opinion, it's the best case scenario. And as long as like I said, a close game where again, like you said, Caleb looks competent. All that is awesome. But winning this game really doesn't net you anything besides, like you said, okay, it's against the Packers. I get that. But like, no matter what, the Packers are still in the playoffs. No matter what, the Bears are still watching from the couch. I mean, we might as well be watching from the couch, knowing that we have the highest chance possible to get the best player to fit this team going forward.
I think I'm very excited for Black Monday because, and this is kind of what we can curve our conversation into because there's, like I said, there's really not much to talk about the game. The Packers are going to put it on the ground. They're going to win. They're going to use this as a get right game. That's what it's going to be. I don't really see a chance where I don't see the Bears winning this game at all. Like like very very weirdly maybe, but what I want to talk about is Black Monday because the more and more I hear like polls is safe, but every time like I hear that, there's always the insider being like, "Well, we don't know though." And I feel like not knowing for sure that he's going to be the GM. Now, I think Ryan Poles stays. But I do think there is an off chance. There's a higher chance, in my opinion, of Poles being let go on Monday than there is of the Bears beating the Packers this Sunday. And both are really low, but just with the way the insiders and people with the sources have been talking, they keep leaving the door open for Poles to be gone. And to me, that's something. Like, I understand, like, I've been following the coaching stuff like pretty closely, right? And I've been seeing that, Ben Johnson doesn't really mind working with Poles. Mind you, this is all speculation from stuff that I have just like read across like a ton of different sources. But the Jacksonville is going to be going hard for Ben Johnson. So my thing is, what if Ben Johnson is just like, I'll take the job, but Poles can't be there? Like, Poles on the last year of his deal coming up in 2025. So like they have to extend him this week. Like, I don't know. Like, I just think if push came to shove, I think they might go for Johnson and
Well, no,
get Poles out of
absolutely.
there.
I mean, well, and look, to that point, Hunter, this is another thing that we have to consider, right? Like, because let me just fact check myself about something real quick, but I'm going to stall by saying, look, that's the problem with what is concerning, I guess we could say right now, is that the reality of the situation is, look, I know that people will be saying, well, oh, they've had to rebuild all these times, all these years, and right now it's a dumpster fire. Well, so are the Bears. About the Jaguars saying, well, why would the Jaguars be a desirable destination? Look, man,
To me,
the
I
reality
understand
is,
why it's more desirable. I
I was gonna
understand
say,
it.
no, you can totally understand for a lot of reasons. But what I was going to say is too, look, you think if he was to have the same contingency with the Jaguars, you think that he'd have any? You think the Jaguars are going to have any trouble letting go of Trent Baalke? You think
No.
that they wouldn't? You know what I'm saying? If Ben Johnson brings the same
Well,
stipulation to
I
them,
think Bulky's gone regardless. And if
well,
you want to be
exactly.
like non-bi, I think there's a chance Bulky's back. But I think if you want to be non-biased, if you're a coach, right? And let's say the offer is like 5 years, 70 million, right? Like 12 to 14 million dollars a year. And you're getting offered a little bit less in Chicago, but Jacksonville, you're going to be able to bring in your own guy at GM. You have Trevor Lawrence, who has shown he can be good. You have, defensive players. Yes, the team needs to be addressed, but the roster in Jacksonville is not horrible. Plus, say what you want about Shad Khan, like not being knowledgeable about like football, this, that, and the third. Do you see how much patience he has shown with some of these coaches and GMs? Like, to me, if I'm Ben Johnson, that's incredibly appealing. Like, if Chicago wasn't giving me everything that I wanted or 90% of it, I'm going to take that Jacksonville job. Like, Trevor Lawrence is good. Brian Thomas Jr. is good. Like, they have a good core of players. I don't want people to write off the Jacksonville Jaguars if you're a Bears fan just because they're Jacksonville. Ben Johnson may prefer Chicago for whatever reasons he has personally, but objectively, the Jacksonville job to me is more appealing, especially because of ownership and the money that I'm going to get, no state income tax. Like, people need to be understanding that if the McCaskies are not going to bend to Ben Johnson, he will probably find himself in Florida. Whether he wants, I think he wants the Chicago job more, but I understand why he would take Jacksonville.
No, Hunter, you're right. People are sleeping on the tax. But it's not, again, it's not even just that though. Like it's more, I think, what you're saying. I will say this on top of it though. Look, the Bears are also right. Flus was the one exception, but even Flus, look, they were patient, right? The Bears are sometimes even too
Yeah,
patient themselves. So it's not
that's
like that's
true.
like something where you're saying that, all right, well, at least, that they're gonna rush me out. But it's more the thing of like you're saying, where the bottom line is, Hunter, the Jaguars at this point in time, you could argue for sure have more pieces in place for a more like direct path to immediately getting back to the playoffs and having like a much clearer plan of how he's going to implement his scheme into like how he's going to operate with those players, right? Like, again, like you've said, Caleb has all the potential. But with Trevor Lawrence, he's already shown you that he can have a really good season. And again,
Yep.
how everyone knows who listens how we feel about Caleb. I always will have all the faith in Caleb. But you do have a more right now polished product in Trevor Lawrence. You can immediately hop in and feel confident in that. And I mean, again, if they're gonna, and it's gonna come down to money, though, Hunter. I think he's made that pretty clear himself. Where the bottom line is, it's like he really respects himself as he should, and he advocates well for himself. I think it's gonna come down, kind of like the Juan Soto was. Juan Soto was, to make a baseball reference, it was like, it doesn't really matter how much. It's like, dude, you're gonna pay me the most, or I'm not sliding, because that's kind of the precedent I'm setting for myself. And that to me is really where I start to worry, though, Hunter, is because the Bears have shown us time and time again, the McCaskies showed us time and time again that they think they're the smartest ones in the room, and that they think that they're almost willing to just say, "Oh yeah, okay, like you think you're the bigger guy, then go do it elsewhere." And then the guy, they go do it elsewhere, and then we're sitting here having the same discussion. Oh, we could have had, like, they can't do it to this. They can't do it to us this year, though, Hunter. Right? Like, there's no way with all the pressure from everybody that they can't get it done with Ben Johnson, right?
I do think the Bears will get out. Eventually, I think the Bears will get outbid by Jacksonville. I will say, though, I do believe that the Bears are willing to give Ben Johnson more than they've ever given a coach before. Like, I don't doubt that the number they've started on is like 12 mil. Like, I'm willing to bet the Bears are putting down 10 to 12 mil right now to start off the negotiations. And I think Jacksonville is probably offering 15, 16 or something like that. I wouldn't be
That is fair.
surprised.
Like, that's probably a good guess.
I wouldn't be surprised if Ben Johnson can get the Bears to like 15, 16, maybe 17. But I don't see the McCaskies paying 20 mil for a coach. I could see Jacksonville doing that. Now, with that being said, I do think now this is a thing that I think a lot of Bears fans have kind of overlooked. I think this was a comment about that Warren said. I believe I think it was Warren or someone mentioned it. I think the Bears are willing to spend on assistant coaches. So I think even let's say they give like Ben Johnson 15 mil, I think they'd be willing to spend money on like getting a top DC. Like that is something that I think the Bears are willing to do. Now, I'm not saying Jacksonville wouldn't do that as well. I just think that's something that the Bears are very focused on, is having a very full, competent coaching staff. And one last thing, Dobbs, let me ask you this question. You can take it from here. Is Trevor Lawrence a quarterback that you win because of, or can you just win with him? Because I think T-Law at his ceiling can be a quarterback that you can win because of sometimes, but most times you're winning with. I think Caleb has shown that he can be a quarterback that you win because of at times. Now, he's super young. We don't know if this will stay around, but I think that's also enticing to a coach.
No, I'm with you. I would lean more towards, though, like, I do think if you can, again, you get a really good line around him. I do still think the Trevor Lawrence's ceiling is still really high, and that's why I always say I'm so tired of people counting quarterbacks out whenever they're in a bad situation. But it's not about that even, because the thing is, Hunter, this is also what I want to consider. Where again, this, because we don't know every single Ben Johnson priority. I do think the money thing is going to be huge, but then also back to like, well, on the other hand, what you get with the Bears that you're not getting with Jacksonville is you're getting one of the biggest fan bases, one of the most loyal fan bases, right? One of the biggest markets. And on top of that, I think, we can kind of imply that being able to stay in the area from Detroit relative to Chicago.
People are not talking about it, especially because he has a family. Yeah.
Well, right. Again, because that's the thing, is it's a huge relocation if we're talking from Detroit to Jacksonville versus, again, I don't know anything about how he would handle that. I don't know I don't really want to speculate on it, but just saying it's possible that even if you do the Detroit Chicago thing, you could put your family in a position where, right, they can still go to the same school, stay in that area while you're out here for the football season, and then you're back during whatever time you have during the week. Like, that's just hypothetical stuff, but that's at least on the table versus like Jacksonville. None of that's on the table. It's a for sure full relocation for everybody.
Huge talking point that people are really not addressing. Like, he has stated multiple times that he loves Detroit. He'll stay there. He's not going to leave an excellent situation for like a good one. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wants to be in the best situation, and he's mentioned that his family loves the area. I think that's the thing, whereas like if Jacksonville is offering him like 2-3 more mil a year, I think he'd be willing to come here. Now, if it's a $10 million a year difference, now that's a whole nother story. And I could see Shad Khan shelling out the cash. I really can. Like, that is going to be the biggest factor. I also do think that I don't know. I think the family factor is going to play a huge role, and I don't think a lot of people are really discussing that right now.
No, that is a good point. And look, and that's the thing. I mean, that's what it comes down to, Hunter. Is that's kind of the bottom line, and that's I think what frustrates us so much as Bears fans at this point is because, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, Hunter, but it's kind of like as a Bears fans, when's the last time that everyone could say, wow, the team like really went balls to the wall with the whole salary cap, with the whole coaching staff, and they went all in, and yeah, we lost with it, and that's all right. When's the last time we can say that? Right. This is kind of the first time it all aligns where it's like, okay, right. Like show us how much that, right. Show the Bears fans how much that we matter because the writing is on the wall. I don't think that I've ever seen the fan base be louder about how much that they want to coach. I can't recall. I think you would agree. I don't think it's ever been close relative to like, there's been times where we kind of have like, right. Bears fans would, okay, we kind of have like an idea who we like versus the other. This year is very clear cut. Like, Ben Johnson is the answer, and that's what you hear from about like 90% of Chicago right now. So it's like
it's just one of those things where like wherever he gets hired, like he's going to run a top of the mill offense. Like you don't know, like yes, sure, he may not be the head coach, but that everyone thinks he can be. But he's going to develop the quarterback. The offense is going to look good. Like it's an offensive league. You have to look at like also another thing, Dobbs, that I don't think people are talking about, and this has turned more into a Ben Johnson discussion. But the reality is the Bears Packers
we
game
can't even hide it. It's where we're at as Bears
doesn't matter. Yeah,
discussion.
And if you look at people want to talk about like, oh well, he's going to have to play the NFC like 6 games a year, right? You have Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Dan Campbell. That's 6 hard games a year. And why would he could just go to the AFC South where it's an easy division. The reality is, easy division or not, when you look at the NFC QBs versus the AFC QBs, you're going to be going versus Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes every year. The division may be tougher in the NFC, but you have a better chance of making the playoffs and making a run in the NFC. When you look at, it's going to be Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff. Like all these guys are good, but they're not like the talents like in the AFC. And we know quarterback is supreme. If you have Ben Johnson and he's able to coach up Caleb Williams, it can be the Bears conference. Now let's get to division first. But hypothetically, if all things go right, it could be the Bears conference with the best quarterback in the conference if Caleb reaches the ceiling.
Well, no, and I also just want to add this, Hunter, because this is where people crack me up, and this is facts, right? Like this is 100% facts. And if you don't agree with this sentiment, maybe you're just on the wrong side of things as a competitor. But Hunter, this is the bottom line: real competitors love that shit. Like okay, I'm being doubted, and I got to build up from where I'm at, and I got to prove that I can do that with harder competition in front of me. Like that's what competitors like. Like I know maybe it's not the popular mindset because a lot of people want to take the easy route, but someone like Ben Johnson, I can see saying like, oh yeah, like they doubt that I can build up the Bears and against all my old squad and all this hard competition in front of me versus like taking the easy route and going to the AFC South and like, oh yeah, we have one team to beat basically right now for the foreseeable future. Like I can see Ben Johnson, he was a real competitor saying like, okay, I look at that as a positive, right? Like as more a lot of people would say, let's just take the easy route. That's the way to do it. I can see someone like Ben Johnson saying like, okay, like, all right, they're already counting me out. Like, I like that, like that's part of like the fun of being a real competitor. Like you showing it against what people would argue is the toughest division of football right now. Like, okay, getting the Bears to the top of that, huge accomplishment. Obviously winning the division anywhere is a huge accomplishment, but I can see Ben Johnson looking at that as a net positive versus how, again, a lot of people would say, well, I just want to take the easy route on that. I mean, take it how you want, but I think that Ben Johnson's a real competitor. I can see him wanting, or not wanting necessarily, but welcoming that type of situation.
Well, I think also kind of going off that, when you want to look at like the Bears situation, like they have a lot of cap, right? And they have 3 picks within the top 45. Jacksonville also has a lot of picks this year. They are picking 5th right now. They have the 41st pick in the second, 2 third-round picks, 2 fourth-round picks, a 5th-round pick, 2 6th-round picks, and a 7th-round pick. So they have a lot of draft capital to work with. I'm going to look at their cap space because I believe the Bears, after some moves and everything like that, should probably be around like, I want to say it's like 90 million, maybe a little bit more than that. But with that being said, I mean, here we go. Cap space in 2025. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 18th with 40 million. So not as much to work with, obviously. The Bears, like I said, are 6th. They're at 81 million right now before anything. You have more flexibility in the draft, but less with cap. I don't think Ben Johnson, I think Jacksonville and Chicago is going to be, I think those are going to be 2 locations. And I think they're just going to be being against each other. And I think both have great situations. I think the Bears are going to go all out and try to get Ben Johnson. With that being said, just to wrap it up here on the Ben Johnson talk, the Bears all out might not match Jacksonville's all out.
No, I think, yeah, again, we're in agreement. And that kind of just goes back to the whole point here, Hunter. Like, this is the McCaskey's chance to really show the fans, right? For the first time in what feels like forever, we're really putting it all on the table. We're going all in, and we're not looking back. This is kind of like, okay, enough going 3/4 in, enough half, right? 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's kind of like
they realize they have the
to go all in. Because again, I understand the perspective of if you're the one that has to shell out the millions of dollars, that if you're saying, well, if this is finally the time we shell out all the money to the coach and it ends up that he was really just a product of a really good culture and system, then we're getting laughed at again. And, oh, like that just makes us look even worse. But as fans, I think every Bears fan would agree that would not be how the situation would be looked at. It would be looked at like, okay, swing and miss on what was the right decision. And again, if Ben Johnson doesn't work out, you have to have pivots in place. And that's why I think you'd agree with this 200. As of right now, what's kind of the situation that's concerning is a lot of the other candidates that the Bears are looking at. It's not maybe necessarily the names that we want to be seeing. And, you'd want the immediate pivot to be Joe Brady. It's like, are we seeing that? No. We want to have our other pivots in place, and it doesn't look like that's kind of the thing. And with what you're saying, where Jacksonville looks like they already, not to say to have a step ahead, but they very well could be a step ahead already. It's like that's where my concern comes in, because I want to see the Bears go to have a really hot pivot, and it doesn't look like that's where we're at right now. And I know it's still early in the process, but you remember what I've been saying and echoing this whole time, Hunter, where I think it's very much about you want to be one of the first people, if not the first person in the door, foot in the door, getting interviews with that person. Because then it shows them how much you really care.
So that has kind of fueled my conspiracy thoughts of like, maybe Poles isn't 100% safe. Like, I would have thought Vrabel would have already been in the building. I would have thought all these guys, Pete Carroll would have already been in the building. And then that, to me, that strikes me as maybe Poles isn't as safe as we think. Because in my opinion, you would have already conducted an interview or two. Like, I don't understand that. Like, Pete Carroll could have been interviewed already. Mike Vrabel could have been interviewed already, and you haven't. That's the advantage that you set when you fire a coach midseason. The fact that they haven't done it, and these insiders keep leaving open the idea that Ryan Poles may not be as safe as people think, strikes me as they haven't made a decision yet, which is a problem. If you're questioning if a guy is fit for your position, he's probably not. But I just think that leaves the door open to Poles not being here after Black Monday.
No, and again, to your point, Hunter, you're spot on. But that would be a net positive. But then also, like we're saying, it's just human nature, right? Like if you were going for a job where they're both looking to pay you very similar things, and one of them has been at your door already for 3 weeks telling you how much they want you and they want to hear your vision, and then you have other, in this case, teams, businesses, apply it to whatever aspect of life, right? That are like knocking late, we're interested now. You're kind of like inherently, it's just psychology. You're like, well, they were showing love first. They clearly are more invested in me. Like, that's just what it shows. Whether or not that, again, they haven't decided on Poles or not, it's kind of like, this is where the Bears are already letting us down, Hunters. It's because it's like, this is the stuff that's the basics. It's like, like you said, Flus you have the advantage over 9 out of 10 teams. You already
like, what are we doing?
Have a head coach next year. Like, you should be the first one in on every single person you deem is worthy. And again, it should be like we talk about a wide net. It doesn't have to be, because that's what's really weird is that the net we've casted, it's a rather narrow net, and it's also a net that a lot of Bears fans would agree is kind of like, so what's the vision with a lot of these guys?
the Anthony,
And
I just
sometimes,
don't under.
sometimes as we know, Hunter, it ends up working out that way where the guy you least
Yeah.
expect ends up being one of the best coaches in the cycle. But I would say it's less often than it is
But
than it
Anthony
is real.
Weaver's not going to be that guy, and they should not seriously consider him whatsoever. It's a similar. They wouldn't. I don't think they'd fire Anthony Weaver, but it's just like it would be such a Bears hire, and it's like you're not in the position. The Bears are not in the position to do one of those. Like they're really not. Like with the way the team is structured, the picks they have, the money they have, the quarterback they have, and this has been echoed the whole time. You have to get this right. But I mean, Dobbs, any final questions or comments on the game, or I guess the Bears' future, as this is what it's turned into, just before we wrap it up?
Final comments again, just to clarify for everyone listening. We appreciate y'all. Look, Bears losing isn't net positive. It is, as much as it hurts to say, especially against the Packers. Again, net positive. You need as high of a draft pick as possible in this draft, given again what the Bears are going to be looking for. There's not tons of it that's going to be at the top of the draft, right? With the direct trench needs. And again, I think we can agree with this, Hunter. After this, we finally get into what is going to be the first fun content in a while, because it will finally be not just the depressing, what are just a repeat of the last 10 plus weeks. So I think you can agree with that. We can finally get into the hypotheticals that are hopefully become reality.
Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to The Bear Cave. We are on all social platforms at The Bear Cave 1920. Have a great rest of your day.